Welcome to the night section. So shout out to Gun Lee for the video suggestion. Been appreciating the support. Y'all can follow him at Gun Lee JP on Instagram. I will leave the link in the description. He's a dope artist. Check him out. And on that note, please be sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell notification if you'd like to see more content like this. Now let's get into the video. Now, back in 2017, Crooked I tweeted, quote, "People jokingly say M's the Elvis of rap. Well, who's the Michael Jackson of rap?" End quote. Chance the Rapper then, quote, tweeted it and said, "Dwayne Michael Carter Jr., he's been in this shit." And Chance the Rapper was definitely onto something. Now, what do Lil Wayne and Michael Jackson have in common? I mean, for starters, they're two of the greatest artists in their respective genres, been relevant for decades at this point, and have amassed a fan base within every age group, race, gender, and creed. But today, I wanted to specifically talk about the parallels between these two, everything from their come-up, career, and childhood, which hopefully will explain why Lil Wayne is hip-hop's Michael Jackson. Number one, a child star was born.
BG is a solo artist, plus he's a member of the Hot Boys. Turk is a part of the Hot Boys. Lil Wayne is a part of the Hot Boys, which will be doing his solo album. And I know y'all all know Juvenile, who is a solo artist, and he's a Hot Boy. You got me and my dog Fresh. He do all beats, game spitting, however you want to live it, nickname it how you want it. Sugar Slim called all shots, and I'm the #1 stunner.
Creeping up on the backside of you here. Oh. Kip, I've got a little bit of a problem with this microphone. It's all snagged in the back, so I'm going to take this one if that's all right with you. Would you make a fast change? Hello, hello? How about that? I'll put this over here.
Most of us growing up were preoccupied with making friends at school, watching cartoons, learning to ride a bike, living a normal life. And Wayne did for a while too. I mean, besides the fact that he was living in a poverty-stricken neighborhood of Holly Grove, New Orleans. Now, Lil Wayne was only 8 years old when he started rapping. Not too long after, he was introduced to Birdman, who would become a mentor and a father figure. Fast forward to 12 years old, after almost not making it past that age due to a suicide attempt, he officially signed to Cash Money Records in 1995. Well, technically he was 11 at the time, but anyways, 2 years later in 97, the group Hot Boys was formed, made up of BG, Juvenile, Turk, and of course, Lil Wayne, who was the youngest in the group. And in the little synopsis there, it seems like a miraculous rags to riches story, and we could say that it was, but in a lot of ways, it isn't and wasn't as glamorous as it sounds, because I think people tend to forget that in a flash, Wayne's childhood was gone. Now, if you contrast that with Michael Jackson's come up, it's identical. Of course, Michael was much younger when he started singing and performing, but Michael also started in a group, as we all know, with Jackson 5, in which he also happened to be the youngest. Both Michael and Wayne were the youngest and the stars of their group. And what we learned with Michael is that his childhood was miserable. For all the monetary success and accolades he received, he would lose parts of himself and sacrifice his childhood. And we as regular folks got to witness it on the world stage and got front row seats to see how it really manifested into his adult life as he attempted to recreate his childhood through the creation of things like a Neverland Ranch, where he turned property worth $19.5 million at the time into essentially a child's paradise. Let's not also forget that he had children at the ranch that he would hang out with. It seemed as though Michael was pulling at teeth, trying to get some semblance of his childhood back.
Yeah. When Gavin was there, he talked about the fact that he shares your bedroom.
Yes.
Can you understand why people would worry about that?
Because they're ignorant.
But is it really appropriate for a 44-year-old man to share a bedroom with a child who is not related to him at all?
That's a beautiful thing.
That's not a worrying thing?
Why should they be worrying? Who's the criminal? Who's Jack the Ripper in the room?
Now, obviously, it was looking very suspect at the time, and in my personal opinion, Michael Jackson was and is innocent. I think because of his childhood trauma, which was essentially being overworked into becoming the greatest entertainer of all time, he tried to make up for that lost time by having children around him and living vicariously through them. And I'm not here to debate whether that was right or wrong, it just was what it was. And we can see the similarities with Wayne, obviously not to the same extent, but one can argue that like Michael Jackson, because Wayne didn't have much of a childhood, as he became older, he's tried to make up for it by picking up things like skateboarding. Skateboarding for the most part is considered a young man's sport, and when Wayne really got into skating, he was already in his late 20s, touching 30s. And don't get it twisted, you could start anything at any age, but it's interesting that at that age, being able to virtually buy and do anything, he chose skateboarding, where you can break bones, and where skate culture for the most part is composed of people that are super young, or at least are starting out at a very young age. Nonetheless, it seems that in both cases with both Michael and Lil Wayne, they both tried to make up for some void in their youth, obviously through different means. And this is really just me speculating, but it's an interesting thought to entertain. Now, when discussing childhood, specifically when talking about the two artists, we fundamentally understand that both Michael and Wayne had a complex childhood. What they also shared while growing up was being exposed to sexuality quite early, and unfortunately in a traumatizing way. If you guys recall, Michael, when he was with the Jackson 5 early on, was performing at strip clubs. In the book Michael Jackson, The Bad Year, written by Ricky Skye, Michael says, quote, "Ever since I was young, I've been surrounded by strange sights, like fans ripping off their coats and standing nude in front of me, and being sent mountains of sexy letters with every kind of suggestion in them. You wouldn't believe some of the things that I saw at an early age. One of the worst memories that I'll never erase is a stripper who played the same club we did when I was 6. She was called Rosemary. After she had taken everything off, she pushed her underwear in the faces of the audience and made them sniff it. It was disgusting. By the time I reached my teens, I guess I've been exposed to most grown-up things." End quote. And not to mention, Michael was also made to encounter prostitutes at the ripe age of 15, just really hitting puberty. His brothers decided that it would be a good idea that Michael should now lose his virginity, and it ended with Michael Jackson bawling his eyes out and reading Bible verses to the two escorts. So not so good. And with Lil Wayne, well, if you don't know by now, here's a clip.
I was fucking at 11. I had Nate at 15, nigga. I had my daughter when I was 15, nigga. It ain't cause you a male, it ain't cause you 15, you supposed to, cause you're young money. You're supposed to. Fuck that shit, nigga. I started fucking. I got raped when I was 11, Twist. I loved it. I ain't never pressed charges. I'ma do you like baby them did me. Yeah. I'll never forget that day. Yeah, no, they was all in the kitchen. I was scared. It was cool. There was about this many niggas and shit too in that bitch. I never forget the word. Suck Lil Wayne, let dick. I was sitting on the couch. Everybody in that bitch. That nigga was like talking. Girl with your good dick. Girl, you know you suck with your good dick. Suck on that. Boy, that bitch suck all nigga. Have a nigga. Bitch, suck Lil Wayne, let dick. I'm sitting there like, sure, yeah. Sucked up. I ain't never had this happen.
So that was difficult to listen to, and hey, we all process trauma differently. That clip came out a while ago, and I doubt that Wayne today would say those same things about him being abused at 11. But for the purpose of showing these similarities between the two artists, hope you guys get the point, and apologies if this may have been triggering to some of you. But on a lighter note, number 2, career. As I mentioned earlier, both Michael and Wayne started when they were children. They earned their stripes as kids, both being in groups, but eventually every bird has to spread their wings, with Wayne going solo in 1999, dropping The Block Is Hot as his first debut album at 17 years old, while Michael Jackson, on the other hand, technically launched a solo career when he was only 13 years old, with his debut album dropping in 1972 titled Got to Be There. But most of us consider Off the Wall, which dropped 7 years later, to be his real solo debut, which was completely independent of the Jackson 5, and at that time Michael was 20, turning 21. Now, before we move further, it's interesting to point out one of the most crucial parallels between the two artists, and that's the fact that their fan base spans multiple generations because they started as children. As both Wayne and Michael were growing up, their fans were also growing up, and those fans had children, and so on and so forth. And because their music was timeless and constantly evolving, they were able to acquire new fans that were much younger than them. Hence why we see 20-year-olds that are fans of both artists today. Having fans across different age groups would aid them into becoming the biggest artists in their genre, both being considered the best and setting the standard for music in their respective genres and time. Lil Wayne was at the peak of his career in the mid to late 2000s. He was the self-proclaimed best rapper alive in 2005, and it didn't take too long for the whole world to agree. Now, what Wayne did that differentiated him from the pack was that he flooded the market with music in those times. 50 Cent is dubbed as the first to have really revolutionized how we distribute and listen to mixtapes today, with remixing already pre-existing songs into his own versions. Now, Lil Wayne took it to a whole other level with just the amount of content. Between 2005 and 2009, Wayne would not only be featured on hundreds of songs, but would drop classic mixtapes like the early Dedication series 1 through 3, the Drought 3, No Ceilings, which are all today considered classics. And in that time period, there was no escaping Wayne. After the drop of the Carter 3 in 2008, which sold over 1 million copies in its first week, by the way, there was no denying about Lil Wayne being the greatest at what he did, being the quote-unquote best rapper alive. And that was when Lil Wayne hit his peak in terms of popularity. Similarly, Michael Jackson, after the release of Thriller, let's just say it was game over. Now, you might think I'm comparing apples to oranges because it's literally the greatest selling album of all time, but the point I'm making is that after that album, Michael had also reached peak popularity and now was acknowledged universally as the king of pop. The craziest part about all of this was that Michael Jackson was only 24 years old when he released Thriller, and Lil Wayne was only 25 when the Carter 3 dropped. So they reached the climax of their career both around the same age. Number 3, work ethic. Now, Lil Wayne's legacy is undeniable. He's influenced an entire generation of artists, but that could have not been done without the insane work ethic he has.
Seriously, I work hard every day. I wake up every day and I go to work. I wake up every night and I go to work. I try not to sleep. I try to work more. And it's only because I'm young. It's not because I'm a workaholic. I believe that when you're young, you're obligated to work. And then when you get to an age that you feel like you're not young anymore, that's what you work for.
Lil Wayne has been known in the industry to be one of the hardest working rappers, if not the hardest working rapper ever. Sleeping, eating, breathing, rapping. I mean, he's been known to cut 4 to 5 songs in a night, every night. Go to award shows, do music videos, do an interview, and while others are out partying, he's back in the studio that same evening. This points to how he's been able to be relevant for so long, which is just the sheer will of wanting to be the best and doing whatever it takes day in and day out. As for Michael Jackson, at a certain point in time, I'm pretty sure that he was the hardest working man on the planet. But no, for real, Michael Jackson was the epitome of hard work. Not only was he writing songs all the time and writing minimum 150 songs for every album, but he was also constantly creating dance moves and choreography for his performances. And in general, very involved in his career, everything from the stage design to the costume design to press releases, etc., etc. His work ethic, however, didn't just show up in adulthood. Back when he was a member of the Jackson 5, they literally released an album every year. And obviously, being a Jackson 5 member under the supervision of Joe Jackson, hard work and perfection was the only option. It really was a double-edged sword for Michael, but that's a conversation for another day. The point is that both had freakish levels of work ethic, and as far as rappers go, Lil Wayne is probably one of the closest to match the work ethic of a Michael Jackson, and that's just based on how long he's been doing it and the fruits of his labor. Night Section